When you're a chronic weed smoker, you often have friends that smoke weed too. And a lot of these friends, the only thing in common you have with them is smoking weed. And some of these people are not worth your time being around. When I was in high school, I made some acquaintances that also smoke weed, and I ended up being in a park and they were doing acid and I partook in it. I did more drugs than what weed is. And I know people say often or not that weed is not a gateway drug. If you're a chronic weed smoker, it can be a total gateway drug because there's other people in that community that do harder things. And this is not a problem for a lot of people, especially when it's legal. But when you're a kid, it's not legal to you anyway. So it can cause a lot of problems being around these kinds of people. And yes, it seems very obvious, but when you're a little weed fiend, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. Or maybe you do, but in your head, you think this is a better choice than not having weed. So, my advice would be to obviously just not smoke weed, but there's other complications with people who smoke weed because it's only about like 1 out of 7 people that actually become chronic weed smokers if they smoke weed regularly. It's not as common as being addicted to nicotine or alcohol, but I feel like it still needs to be talked about. And that's why I kind of been talking about it a lot more, is because it's not talked about. Like in a lot of places where it's legal, it's not talked about because there's always harder things that are being done. Like let's talk about Vancouver, like the whole area, how British Columbia decriminalized all drugs. No one's talking about weed. Everyone's fine with that, right? Because everyone's doing fentanyl, meth, and all this stuff on the streets. Like, you can't smoke a cigarette outside of a fucking flaker, but you, for some reason, you can smoke meth. It's kind of backwards, if you think about it. But that's not really the point. What I'm saying here is that people are focused on, like, the harder things, that no one's actually talking about the small things that affect regular people day to day. And that's what I really want to do. I see about stoner friends is that you're not actually friends, you just share the addiction. And that's with a lot of things like video games and stuff. You only share a common interest, and that's the only reason why you're friends. And there's a lot of like friendships, which is kind of sad to say, but there's no deeper connection, and that's really what you want for a friendship. And I'm not saying like a lot of these people I met are bad people. Not at all. No, there's actually plenty of good people, but the only reason why everyone was so buddy is because we just smoked weed, and that was it. In a lot of cases, it's not going to get to an extreme point where they're doing other drugs, but just be aware if you're a stoner right now that some of your friends just might be just weed smokers, and that's the only reason they hang around with you. And that's all I really got to say for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.